Hello, this is Jerry Morton. Welcome to my Finding My Way podcast. This is podcast number 56, titled Camping Out. Podcasts 34 through 61 are stories from the year of Army training I experienced. The training started in August 1966 and ended in June 1967. The stories are published in the book Reluctant Lieutenant, From Basic to OCS in the 60s, which was published by Texas A&M University Press as a military history. Podcast 56, Camping Out, is an account of the 10 days of war games Jerry's infantry company engaged in during the spring of 1967. The activities demonstrated to Jerry the need to have a backup plan for every operation in the field. It is recommended that you listen to the Army stories in the order in which the podcast numbers present them, so that you can appreciate the full contextual richness of this and later stories. Podcast 56, Camping Out. They had built us up for this. We were to be tactical 24 hours a day for the entire time in the field. That meant almost 2 full weeks of playing war games. At no time were you safe from ambush or attack. Other OCS companies were participating in this maneuver as well. Our company had been divided up. The platoons were mixed up so that just a few of us 5th platoon guys were together. Some of them would be the enemy. We would be issued C rations and ammo. If our food got captured, we would have to go hungry unless we captured some other unit's food. The field cadre would be trucking in supplies. We could capture trucks, jeeps, or whatever. You had to stop a vehicle in order to capture it. They did not want us getting run over trying to capture a moving truck. Whatever was in any truck we captured was ours. Of course, the same thing could happen to our supplies. We would have to provide security for our supply vehicles when they were stopped. At any time, one or all of us could be captured and held prisoner for an unspecified period. The enemy could interrogate us for information about patrols, base camp location, supply drops, and so forth. Our mission was to seek out and destroy the enemy. We were to put into practice all of the tactical knowledge we had learned. Failure to perform successfully could jeopardize one's chances of graduating. This was serious business. Our trucks seemed to travel forever through a maze of dirt roads and unending woods. As we rolled along, some of the trucks would split off from the main group. Finally, we were down to 4 trucks carrying 2 platoons. The 100 or so of us in the 4 trucks would stay together for the whole exercise. Any other units we encountered were the enemy. As soon as our trucks stopped, we were tactical and subject to attack at any time. Conceivably, the trucks could stop in the middle of an ambush site. Abruptly, the trucks stopped. According to plan, we immediately jumped out of the backs of them and formed a 360-degree perimeter defense in anticipation of being attacked on the spot. We moved without a word. All commands were to be given silently, using hand and arm signals. No one was to make unnecessary noise that might attract the enemy's attention. Once we had secured the area, the designated unit leader would signal for us to withdraw from defending the trucks and head for our rendezvous point. He had a map and had pinpointed its location about 5 miles deeper in the woods. The rendezvous point was where we would form our base camp. From there, we would operate our patrols, receive our ammo and food supplies, and maintain security. It was home, our safe haven. Its location had to be concealed from the enemy while we searched out and destroyed the base camps of the multiple enemy forces in the area. Staring into the woods from a prone position with my M14 pressed against my shoulder and my finger on the trigger was a rush. Quickly my eyes scanned the nearby trees and those at a distance. There was no movement. The quietness of the woods was a stark contrast to the idling truck engines behind me. The trucks would stay in our protective circle until we moved out. Then they would go wherever empty Army trucks went until they returned to take us back to the barracks. I was in the middle of the protective circle on the left-hand side of the truck column. Men were in identical prone positions all along that side of the trucks, as they no doubt were on the other side of the trucks. Now all we had to do was wait for the silent signal from on my left or right. The afternoon sun felt good on my back. It took the chill off of the cold spring air. Actually, it was pleasant just to rest on the roadside. A guy could easily drift off to sleep. As the minutes dragged on into 5 and 10-minute clumps, I began to feel more and more comfortable. Heck, I had not been given any responsibilities on this leg of our exercise. I just needed to do what I was told. No one asked me to look at the maps and figure out where to go. I did not have to walk flank security, point, or bring up the rear. The radio man was with the unit leader. All I had to do was walk along in the middle of the column. Just keep my place in line, and I would get a paycheck at the end of the month. Not bad. Not bad at all. I was still lying there thinking when someone grabbed my foot. I twisted around with a start, ready to fight. Jerry, something's wrong. I'm going on the other side of the trucks. We've been lying here for more than 30 minutes. That's too long. The guy holding my foot whispered in concern. Okay, came my muted response as I began sensing another foul-up. Damn, I thought. Nothing ever seems to go right in this man's army. I turned around at the sound of running footsteps behind me. The guy who had gone to check things out raced around from the back of the last truck. Shit! They're all gone. The other side of the truck is deserted. There's nobody there. Somebody screwed up. Somebody didn't pass the word to move out, he said with real strain in his voice. Hell. We were lost before we even got started. This was an all-time first for me. On top of that, none of us had seen the map or had a clue as to where the base camp was. The unit leader had not included any of us in the inner circle. Half of his outfit was lost in the woods, and he did not even know it. The lost half had no clue as to where the other half was headed. This was just the berries. One of the guys wandered over to our group of bemoaners. He said there was a clear trail heading off into the woods on the unguarded side of the trucks. They must have taken that trail, he speculated. If they had gone any other way, they would have had to go through thick underbrush. We would have heard more than 50 men crashing through it, but none of us had. Besides, there were no broken branches, kicked up dirt, or any of the other signs you would expect to find in the aftermath of that many men using brute force to push their way through such dense brush. They had to have taken the trail. It was the most logical conclusion. One thing was certain. We could not stay there with the trucks for the whole exercise. The decision was made. We would take off down the trail, walking as fast as we could. Quickly, we appointed someone to bring up the rear. There would be no flank security. We needed to move too fast for that. Everyone was to keep the man ahead of him and behind him within sight at all times. If anyone lost visual contact, the whole column was to stop immediately. We were not going to lose anyone else. No one wanted to be lost out here. There would be no food after we ate the 1 C-ration meal we had been issued. You could wander out here for a long time. None of us had the slightest clue as to where we were, where anyone else was, or how to get out of this wilderness. Yes, sir, we were not going to lose anyone else. It did not take long to break into a sweat. We were pushing ourselves hard. There was no complaining. 1 hour, then 2, and still no contact with the fools who had left us behind. This was not good. At last the word came back. We had caught up with the rear of the column. Great! What a relief! I passed the good news to the man behind me. Our pace slowed to a normal march. After another hour of group marching, the whole column took a break. I asked a couple of the guys who had been ahead of me if the unit leader was a little relieved to know he'd gotten his unit back together. Well, no, he never knew we were lost. Nobody knew we were lost. The point man said when he caught up with the last man in their column and told him that he was glad he had finally found him, the guy thought he was joking. He thought we had been there behind him ever since we left the trucks. Now, isn't that wonderful, I thought. Gives me a lot of confidence in our ability to screw up. The next 2 weeks in the field might not be as much fun as I had anticipated. That night, I pulled the first 4 hours of guard duty. My partner and I both stayed awake in our make-believe foxholes. Theoretically, one of us would sleep for the first 2 hours and then pull guard duty for the rest of the shift. However, we were too hyped up. There was too much going on. Already, night patrols were being sent out into the darkness. We were given a secret sign and countersign to use to challenge anyone passing through our lines. The enemy could be anywhere. Our patrols were seeking him out just as his patrols were looking for us. We had to protect the camp. In order to do that, we had to know where the enemy was without letting him know where we were. All in all, it was a complicated business. Sleep finally came. We were all tired. The march into base camp had lasted well into the hours of darkness. Once we reached the rendezvous point, confusion was total. Guys kept being moved around because our leaders were unable to define the camp's boundaries. We ate our cold sea rations when we could. Sleeping bags and air mattresses were unrolled wherever you were assigned a spot, only to be gathered up and relocated because someone had changed his mind. A lot of personal equipment never to be found again after those fumbling moves in the darkness. The site will no doubt make some young archaeologist's career 1,000 years from now. The night shadows held a lot of unhappiness. A cold front came through, forcing all those not moving around to get into their sleeping bags for warmth. Each personal misery was thought to be owned by that person and the few squad members with whom the darkness allowed him to communicate. No opportunity for organized discontent existed. The joint misery of the moment created a simple unity. At 0400 hours, everyone was awakened to be ready to repel a pre-dawn attack. The enemy loved to attack during the pre-dawn hours. That was a time when their foe, in this case us, was sleeping or the least alert. A surprise attack would catch us off guard. It seemed to me that there was a fundamental flaw in this assumption. Since we knew this was a strategy of the enemy's, we were ready when we should not be. If the army always did this, then the enemy would be catching on that we were always alert during the pre-dawn hours, and would never attack at that time. I would have gladly expressed this opinion to those in command if someone had sought it out. They never did. One thing was certain: preparations to repel a pre-dawn attack made you dog-tired for the rest of the day. One more patrol. At first, I had been pretty excited about going out on patrol. After 2 days of constantly moving on the trail, pulling guard duty at night, and then practicing pre-dawn alerts, fatigue dominated my consciousness. "Take 10, smoke 'em if you got 'em," came the word down the line. I sat on a log, wrapped my arms around the barrel of my M14, and let my helmeted head rest on the impromptu cradle I created with this tripod. "Wake up! Wake up! The squad is moving out," Duke said, shaking me violently. "Jeez, thanks," I replied, startled. I was shaken. I had never fallen asleep before like this. This was the first time in my life that I had fallen asleep. It was scary. I had heard neither the order to move out nor the noise of the men getting up and walking away. Hell, I could have wakened with everyone gone. If it had not been for Duke, that is what would have happened. This was not good. No doubt about it. You cannot close your eyes out here unless you intend to go to sleep. 2 of us are assigned to man a forward guard post. We are positioned about 1,000 meters out from the base camp in a clump of bushes halfway down a sloping hill. There is some brush on it, but comparatively speaking, it is open terrain. 500 yards or so further down the hill is the start of a large tree and brush line that has obviously grown up on both sides of a creek. Our orders are to hold this position until relieved. It is unclear, however, just when we will be relieved. If we are attacked, we are to open fire with our rifles. Our firing will alert the guys back in the base camp. They will send us reinforcements. My partner and I quickly decide that the OCS candidate who thought up those orders had not yet had the opportunity to serve a tour of duty in a forward guard post. We will haul ass the minute we see troops breaking from the tree line. Sure, we will fire our weapons, but that will simply be to make noise. If we waited for someone back in base camp to decide to rescue us from the stirred-up chaos an attack would produce, we would be hamburger in a cannibal's sandwich before they arrived. We just definitely could not be captured. We were not going to be captured. The cold was numbing. I decided to build a Dakota fire. Fires were strictly forbidden. The smoke would give away your position. In Boy Scouts, I had seen pictures of Dakota fires. They were supposed to be smokeless, I explained to my partner. He agreed to the plan. Neither of us had been warm for more than 2 days. Using my entrenching tool, I dug 2 small holes about 1 foot deep with 3 inches of dirt separating them. Each was a little more than 6 inches in circumference. At the bottom, I dug a tunnel connecting the 2. Theoretically, one hole held the fire. The other provided a draft to feed the fire with oxygen. Since the fire got plenty of oxygen, it would not smoke. A pretty clever scheme. We could cover both holes if anyone came from base camp before they got to our post. Overall, a foolproof plan. The guys back in base camp would probably forget we were even out here. They were so screwed up back there that it was pathetic. The disorganization was unbelievable. Every time they put a new candidate in charge, it just got worse. On top of that, the idiots would not listen to anyone's suggestions. Once appointed to command, an instant Napoleon was on hand. After gathering some small dead twigs from nearby trees, I had my kindling. You could not use wood lying on the ground. It was soaked from the cold rain that fell at night. A few larger twigs on top of the kindling would make the fire last long enough to warm our hands quite comfortably. At last, it was time to strike the match. The activity had given me new life. I was in control. Things were definitely on the upswing. Goodbye, misery. Hello, happiness. I think the Everly Brothers song went. The match was struck. The twigs began to burn immediately. A column of smoke quickly rose from the hole. Shit! Damn it to hell! It was rising to the sky. The smell of overly smoked fish seemed to surround us. Oh, God, we were going to get discovered. Actually, I had never built a Dakota fire before. It had worked so well in the camping magazine article I had read years ago. No time to debate the issue. We quickly poured our canteens over the smoking mess. A brief burst of smoke and then it was out. What was that sound? My partner had heard it too. Guys were talking. Several of them were talking. You could hear them moving on the other side of the creek bed. Judging by the sound of the moving brush, a lot of men were traveling parallel to the creek. Nobody told us about any patrols moving out or coming back from our sector. Maybe they were the enemy. So far, we had failed to find the enemy, and the enemy had failed to find us. Our orders were clear. We were to hold our position if attacked. This could be a bad situation. Fortunately, they kept on walking. You could hear the muted voices and the sound of brush against their fatigues getting fainter and fainter until they were gone. A few hours later, we were relieved. Our relief knew nothing about past troop movements in our sector. We told them about the voices. They were not concerned. Back in base camp, our attempts to tell someone in charge about the troops moving to our front failed to get a response. We gave up, opened some C rations, ate, and crawled into the sack. One of my 5th platoon mates is assigned to be my squad leader. It is reassuring to be with someone I know. We'd been assigned to go out on another patrol. Together we studied the map. It was a real confidence builder to know where we were going and how to get back. There is a comfort in that. About 2 hours out, we heard the grinding of a truck engine. As we continue, it gets louder. Clearly, it is a stuck vehicle. The squad leader wants to stay clear of it. Heck, it could be a supply vehicle. Our rules of engagement say that we can capture it if it is not moving. The supplies would then be ours. What a coup that would be! To my amazement, he does not even want to take a look. Damn! I argue vigorously. We're supposed to capture the enemy and his supplies. What's the point of being out here if we continuously pass up opportunities? Okay, the squad leader reluctantly conceded. We'll sneak up to the creek bank and take a look-see. 8 sets of eyes looked at the vehicle stuck in the middle of the creek. 2 enlisted men, ankle-deep in mud and water, are pushing on the back of it as the driver guns the engine, trying to rock it forward one more time. No use. It is badly stuck. My guess is they will have to unload the cases and cases of C rations before they will ever get it out. Let's go capture it, I volunteer gleefully. No, it could be a trap, the squad leader cautioned. Are you crazy? It's obvious they're cadre. They messed up and got stuck. They are trapped. This is a piece of cake, I shot back in exasperation. No, we could get in trouble. Besides, we can't carry all those cases back to base camp, he put forth as a lame excuse to do nothing. Well, let's go down there and offer to help push it out for 2 cases of C rations per man, I shot back. Look, I'm the squad leader here. You're not. It's too risky. We're leaving it alone. Got me? Came his angry reply. Okay, I think you're wrong. You're squad leader. Okay, I said, and that was that. We withdrew from the creek bank and continued walking. The grinding of the truck's engine could still be heard as we moved a few hundred yards down the trail. I was on point. Moving through the brush, what, to my surprise, lay before me but a sleeping soldier with his M14 at his side. Silently, I motioned for the others to be quiet and come forward. Curled up before us was Jean. Good old muddy boots in the wall locker Jean. He must have been on guard duty, expecting someone to come from the opposite direction of our arrival. It really did not make any difference. He was sound asleep. You got him from any direction you wanted to get him. I poked him with the barrel of my rifle. He woke with a start. What? Who? What? He sputtered in surprise. Shh, I whispered. Any noise and I'll hit you with a butt stroke. Damn, Jerry, he said, sitting up and wiping the sleep from his eyes. Take it easy. I'll be quiet. Shit, I'm in trouble now. You sure are. You're our prisoner now, I said as one of the guys picked up his rifle. Where are the rest of your guys? They must have left me here. I was the last guy in my patrol. We stopped to rest and I fell asleep. Don't take me prisoner. I'll be in a lot of trouble. I've got a map to where we were going. You could take that. It'll show you about where our base camp is. That ought to be enough, he said, his voice whining. Look around the area, I said to the other guys. He might be lying. Yes, echoed the squad leader. That's a good idea. As the guys spread out and poked the bushes, I asked the squad leader, well, what do you want to do? Let's tie him up and get the hell out of here, came his quick reply. Just as quickly I shot back, look, he can't be here alone. His people have to be around. Let's make a sweeping search and see what's going on. No, we've accomplished enough with this patrol. Damn, this guy just lacked a sense of adventure. We could really be on to something. In anger, I stated, what's with you? Listen, you're not running the squad, I am. You're going to do what you're told, he ordered with fire in his eyes. Our prisoner broke the deadlock. Come on, you guys, you've got everything from me you can get. Let me go. No, you're coming with us, the squad leader shot back. I jumped in. Hey, man, he's right. He's a good guy. Let's not make his life more miserable than it's going to be. Leave him here. Okay, Cherry, but we'll tie him up. That way he can't run back and get some guys to attack us before we get out of here, the squad leader stated. All right, I responded, but tie him up so that he'll be able to get loose after a while. I did not want him to accidentally starve to death out here. Okay, the squad leader agreed as some of the guys went to work tying him up. Jeez, thanks, guys. I'll help you out sometime, Gene said with true conviction in his voice. We left him there and started back to base camp. As we passed the creek on our return trip, the truck was still grinding away. The mud had not released it. Back in base camp, we presented the map, radio codes, and other documents to the unit leader. The 1st Platoon's TAC happened to be in base camp when we reported. It's about time somebody did something, the lieutenant snorted. Everyone in this operation has been a bunch of pansies. You guys had better start being aggressive or we'll leave you out here another 10 days. The whole camp was on the move. The word is, we have been in one spot too long. The enemy is bound to find us through a process of elimination. That logic makes sense, but no one had let me in on the big picture. As far as I can tell, the whole operation is one big mess. From the build-up the cadre had given us, I thought we would be in firefights almost every day. Either there are not that many candidates in the field, or none of us can find the others. Maybe there just was not supposed to be much contact between units on these field exercises. I just do not know. One thing is certain. You are lucky to get 3 or 4 hours of sleep a day. Everybody is making a hell of a lot of stupid mistakes. Before you move out from a rest stop, you have to make sure your buddies have not fallen asleep. The real enemy here is fatigue. Maybe that is the lesson the Army wants us to learn. Pow, crack, pow, 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 rat-a-tat, pow, pow, pow. We are under ambush. Everyone drops, returns fire, and then starts crawling toward better cover. Damn, they are firing at us from a long line of fallen trees more than a quarter of a mile away. You cannot even tell if you know any of them at this distance. Hell, they have botched this ambush. In a real situation, they would have hit only a few of us at best. Given our fields of fire, we would have gotten that many or more of them. If I had been in charge of the ambush, I would have tracked our movement and sent some men ahead to set up a better location. I think they would have been better off never opening up at us at that far range. It was a botched ambush. Stimulating nonetheless. At least now we are all awake and alert. Our step has more spring as we pull away. Another long night march to set up another ambush site. They say the tactical officer told the new platoon leader where and when one of the enemy patrols would be passing down a trail. I do not know the platoon leader at all. It does not make any difference. They all seem to be first-class screw-ups. This is a long march to wherever we are going. The cold rain makes it miserable. Our rifles slung over our shoulders, barrels down, pokes the poncho up so that our feet and legs get soaked with that cold rain. Tonight they make me an automatic rifleman. The weight of the extra magazines of ammo seems to push the mud up higher on my boots. It really does not matter. The misery factor could not be much greater. Everything except my rifle and the ammo magazines is soaked. The butt of my M14 is just awkward enough to keep the poncho hood from fitting around my neck. Cold rain drips down my chest. High on the side of a ridge, the column stops. This is it. I just cannot believe it. We are being ordered to go down the bank. We are going to ambush the enemy from the base of the bank. Sliding down the bank, I have to hang on to tree trunks to keep from falling. It is really steep. About 20 yards from the dirt road, cut into the side of the ridge, we stop. We are to lie prone on the hillside, in the mud, in the rain, and wait for the enemy. There is no way to keep from sliding down the hillside unless you lock an arm around something. Hooking an arm around a sapling finally stops my slide. Hanging onto the little tree and trying to set up the bipod for my automatic M14 is awkward and difficult. The movements cover me with mud. Anything on me that had a hope of staying dry is history. At last, the bipod is set up and a magazine is inserted. My motions have removed what little leaf cover was on the bank. The slipperiness of the underlying ground would have brought pleasure to any mud-sliding otter. The slightest adjustment of my arm around the sapling causes me to slide in the mud as if I were a pendulum on a grandfather clock. From the little I could see, the men on either side of me are in the same difficulty. Without relaxing my hold on the tree, I try to loosen my extra magazines so I can pull them out and reload quickly. Once the M14 opens up, it empties magazines within a couple of blinks of the eye. To pull off the ambush, they will need the firepower of the automatic weapon. Well, in this case, the noise of an automatic weapon. There is no way in hell I could hit anyone in a real firefight from this position. Only if the enemy stretches his head up over the bank would I even see him. All he has to do is stand against the back edge of the road, and I would never know if he was there. He is in a better position to pick off me and the other guys than we are to hit him. Why, he would not even have to expose himself to our bullets. He could just roll hand grenades down the hillside. I simply cannot believe someone leading us could be as stupid as this guy is. If I knew who it was, I would exert the extra energy to go and tell him how bad an idea this is. Since I do not know the guy, I just huddle up the best I can with my poncho and my weapon. Pulling the poncho completely over my head and bunching it around my face traps my breath. It feels nice and warm. This is comfortable. I close my eyes. Pow, 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 pow. I wake up in the middle of it, pushing my poncho back from my head and off the automatic rifle. I open up. Rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat, rat-tat-tat. Silence. It has jammed. My automatic weapon has jammed. Pulling the breech to my face as fast as I can, I see the problem. A round has failed to seat in the chamber properly. Immediately I pull back on the bolt without loosening my grip on the sapling. The shell springs out. Then the bolt slams forward and chambers around. It is ready. Returning to the fire position, I empty the magazine. There is no one to shoot at. I hear noise and shouts from above and the sound of return fire to my right. There is nothing to see, no muzzle flashes, no bodies, no one stupid enough to stick his head over the edge of the road to see me firing at him. In short, if I had live rounds, I could be shooting the branches off of trees. Maybe one of the falling branches could knock out one of the enemy. That is the best I could hope to accomplish. Cease fire, cease fire, comes a cry. Up and down the line, we had sprung the ambush. Now it was hours of marching in the dark and rain before we got back to base camp. At last, we were able to crawl into our sleeping bags. Some poor guys were selected to pull perimeter guard. I was lucky that night. I could sleep. It would not be long before everyone would be awakened for the pre-dawn alert. I struggled to get my boots off. They were soaked, as was everything else. I always used them as my pillow. That way I could guard them. In case of an emergency, they were immediately available to put on. No one wanted to be running blindly through the underbrush without his combat boots on. My sleeping bag was nestled between a few fallen branches from the large tree I had propped my backpack against. I placed my poncho over it as a rain cover. Removing my wet fatigues and bunching them under the bedding, I crawled into the sleeping bag and then pulled my weapon in with me. I was ready for a long winter's nap. My weapon would stay dry. No one would snatch it. All was secure. I pulled my head into the bag until my entire body was covered. The rhythm and heat of my breath quickly lulled me to sleep. Pow, 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 pow. Met my ears amidst a barrage of shouts, hollers, and curses. We were under attack. The cloudy dawn light was just bright enough for me to make out people running everywhere. As I peeked out from my sleeping bag, there was no way of telling the good guys from the bad guys. Weapons were firing in all directions. Everywhere I looked, I saw muzzle flashes. The enemy was running through the camp, whooping and hollering. They were clearly pleased with themselves. Lots of our guys were up and adding to the confusion. There did not appear to be a clear reason for me to give up the comfort of my sleeping bag. Rolling over, I pulled the top of the sleeping bag over my head just as a running fool stepped on me. He probably did not even bother to look down at what he had stepped on. My place between the fallen branches appeared to be too well camouflaged. I fell asleep. Around 1100 hours I awoke. What a treat it was to sleep in. The base camp was still in chaos. I felt great. Some of the guys had chased after the enemy into the woods. Many of them got lost. Guys were drifting in from all directions. No one seemed to be aware of or care about my activities during this great morning. Seeing no need to tell anyone about my luxurious sleep, I did not. Being one of the few not overwhelmed by sleep deprivation, I observed the lack of clear thinking displayed by my comrades. It was bad. Each decision in subsequent order seemed to be worse than the one before. Our field trip had started at a low point. It had just gotten worse and worse. Fortunately, it was easy to outmaneuver the sleepwalking student commanders. My last 2 days in the field were the least stressful of the whole operation. Back in the barracks, we learned that 3 guys from the 3rd Platoon, 3rd Herd, as they called themselves, had gotten lost during the 2 weeks in the field. They were still lost. It took several days to find them. Helicopters and search teams were dispatched to look for them. Thinking that they were still supposed to be tactical, even though they were lost and without food, they hid from the choppers and search teams. We also found out that at the time my squad captured Gene, he was the leader of a platoon set up in an ambush site. We had been right in the middle of all of them. While we stood there debating whether or not we were going to take Gene prisoner or just tie him up and leave him, his entire platoon was sound asleep in camouflaged positions all around us. We never saw them. They never woke up while we were there. In just a week, we would get an off-post weekend pass. Anna was flying into Columbus, Georgia. A month or so after that, during the last part of May, we would become senior candidates. Once you made senior candidate, they stopped harassing you. The basic and intermediate candidates had to salute you and obey your orders. You could harass them as you had been harassed earlier. You repainted your helmet liner from black to baby blue. Light blue was the color of the infantry. You wore a neck scarf matching the soft blue of the helmet liner. It was quite distinctive. There would be a big party on the Friday we turned into senior candidates. We were encouraged to bring our wives or girlfriends. A live band was scheduled to play for us. Then we would get another off-post weekend pass. Life would be good as a senior candidate. The weekend I spent in Columbus with Anna was great. Several of the guys came by the motel to meet her. She has such a beautiful smile. We became resolved to the fact that I was not going to get out of infantry. We decided to have a baby. I explained to her the Army's dream sheet. The Army lets you request any assignment or training course you want. That does not mean you will get it. It just means you can officially request it. Since we knew where infantry officers were going, there was no point in asking for another assignment. I could, however, ask for more training. Anna and I decided that I would put in for the Psychological Warfare School at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I thought I might as well try to learn how the Army attempted to use the principles of psychology. Since the Kentucky high school Anna was teaching at would be in the middle of finals at the time of the senior candidate party, we agreed that she would not fly down that weekend. She was going to come to Fort Benning a week later to live off post. That was another benefit of being a senior candidate. You could live off post with your wife until graduation, although you still had to make all of the formations.